Aki listeners, I'm Clayton. Let's learn sumo. Don't forget to hit subscribe to get regular updates on this podcast. Join me on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at Let's Learn Sumo. Leave me a comment, ask me a question, and I'll try and answer it. So we've got the September Aki Tournament coming up shortly. We have a few people who've pulled out already. Let's go through some of the bouts and some of the people who we think are going to do well in this tournament. So let's start off with those who are missing. Well, yesterday we got the news that Yokozuna Terunofuji is out of the Aki Basho in September. He herniated a disc in his back and had some hip troubles in July, which caused him to pull out after day 3. That led to him basically trying to recover before September. He did go on the regional tour, but he never fought any bouts. He did some training. And again, recently, last week, they had the All Stables practice in front of the Yokozuna committee at the Kokugikan in Tokyo, where everyone gets together and practices in front of the grading committee. As a result, Terunofuji was there and he was, conducting training and allowing people to push him, and obviously the senior member of the sumo group. But of course, he takes on the Ozeki and he allowed Kirishima into the ring with him and basically allowed Kirishima to push him back and forth across the ring in front of the Yokozuna Council. And I think that was probably a little bit of a performance, to be honest, to let the Yokozuna Council know, I'm still here, I'm still capable. However, he has pulled out of the tournament with the herniated disc, and as we know, Yokozunas don't get demoted. If they don't compete or they keep losing, they get a bit of pressure to retire. And I think this was all a little bit of a performance in front of the Yokozuna Council. Let them know I'm still here and I will be back, and I'm not totally broken yet. Interestingly, it was a bit of a torture session for Kirishima for his second tournament coming. He basically pushed and pushed and pushed until he could push no more, and it looked a little bit disrespectful the way Terunofuji picked him up, but I think you'll find that's just the way that sumo works, in that he was basically saying, come on, keep going, keep it up, let's go, to the junior Ozeki. Anyway, at the end of that, Kirishima looked totally broken. I think Hoshoryu did a similar session as well, and he basically went until he was ultimately busted as well. So where does that leave us? Well, Terunofuji is out. At that Basho, we also saw someone else who might be in a bit of trouble, is Nishikigi. He looked like he strained a calf muscle. He is on the list for day 1 and 2 matchups, but that'll be interesting to see where he goes. The other people who are out this tournament, unfortunately, the wonder kid Haku Oho is out. He had shoulder surgery at the end of August. It's a long-running shoulder injury, and he's obviously wants to get that fixed. He's looking long-term rather than short-term. I think we are also looking at our Ozeki Takakeisho coming back. Now, remember, Takakeisho is kataban for September, so he needs at least 8 wins. We're not sure where he's at. He's hasn't got any strapping on his knees, and bear in mind, he's kind of almost forced to compete in this one if he wants to stay at Ozeki. I think he'll still push out those wins. Kirishima, certainly he trained. He didn't really, we've not heard anything much about his injuries from July, but after watching him during that practice session with Terunofuji, he didn't look too injured, and he looked like he was in pretty good form and had plenty of strength, and albeit he was pretty stuffed at the end of that section. So he looks like he's healthy. He should make the 8 wins, if not double figures. Hoshoryu, well, he is in good form. He's in hot form after winning the July tournament. I personally think he's the strong favourite for this tournament. Daisho, well, remember, he busted a rib at the end of the tournament against Wakamoto Haru. We haven't really heard much about his rib. He has been practicing. I think he was obviously in a bit of pain, but I think he'll be fine. His style, his Sapari thrusting style, will test those ribs quite hard because it's a very powerful momentum-driven style, and it's amazing and it works, but as we've seen, his footwork can leave him a bit prone to a Hitakikomi slapdown if he's not careful. Wakamoto Haru, he's still in form. He's able to do it. He's again on his Ozeki run like Daisho. They effectively failed at their Ozeki run in July, which leaves them both Daisho and Wakamoto Haru needing almost a perfect score. About 13, 14, 15 would kind of put them in the view of the grading council, but I think unless they pull the 14 or 15, neither of them are going to get to Ozeki, and they're going to need to start again. Got the new Shin Ozeki, or the new Ozeki, Kotonowaka. He's debuting at Sekiwake, up from Komosubi, the big human pillow. He has had a pretty good tournament, 11-4. That's a pretty good record for July, after an 8-7 in May, a 9-6 in March. So he's been punching out the kachikoshis all the way. He's got a pretty good history. I saw an interesting video this week of a very young Kotonowaka with his father, who was a sekiwake, training when he looked all of about 8 or 9. Super cute, and obviously he had a bit of bulk about him even back then, but he's certainly learnt from his father. I'm still not convinced about his one-handed upright style, but I must say towards the end of the tournament in July, he did push out a couple of good Yorakiri wins, a little bit more lower in his centre of gravity, a bit more active in his sumo. So I think if he keeps on that track, he will ultimately make it to Ozeki. He is quite a performer, and he showed his consistency this year in a run of kachikoshi since going back to November, a 9-6 as well. Tobizaru up to Komosubi on the back of his only just Kachikoshi 8-7. He had a pretty terrible start to the tournament, where he had 2 wins in 8 days, and one of those was a Fusen win. So he really needs to get himself running and in form as the tournament goes. Nishikigi, as we talked about, he's probably a bit disappointed about July. He'd beaten all the Sekiwake up to mid-tournament and basically only had to face the lower Magashira, where he lost 4 on the trot to finish the tournament against Hakuoho, who was obviously in very good form, Ryuden Hokuto Fuji, who was also in good form, and Shononumi. But he did run out of steam, and he's in a little bit of trouble at this tournament. Hokuto Fuji didn't get his promotion that high, but he did get up to Magashira 1. He was not going to make it up to Komosubi in front of Nishikigi or Tobizaru, so a 12-3, a fight off of the Basho, that got him a big promotion up to Magashira 1, where this will be a bit of a test for him. He took out a couple of big scalps, including Hoshoryu, but he lost to Wakamoto Haru and Hakuoho late in the tournament. Meisei gets himself up to Magashira 1 on the back of his 8-7, but he's really had a pretty poor year otherwise. A 5-10 in January, 5-10 in March. He got a 9-6 back in November, but he had a reasonable tournament in July as well. So he's up to Magashira 1. So let's have a quick look at day 1 and 2, and let's see who's fighting who. So day 1, the bout of the day, they call it, which is the last bout of the day. Kirishima versus Tobizaru. They got a 3-all record. Tobizaru won in July. This is not going to be an easy customer for Kirishima. It's going to be a little bit of a test for him, but look, I'll give this to Kirishima. Hokuto Fuji versus Takakeisho. Again, Takakeisho might find this is not an easy match. He's got a 2-0 lead. They last met in November, but Hokuto Fuji has a pretty good form at the moment. I think he'll give Takakeisho a little bit of trouble here. I'm going to give this one to Hokuto Fuji, to be honest. Abi versus Hoshoryu, 3-2 to Hoshoryu. I would think that Hoshoryu will win this fairly easily. A 3-2 record, I think he's in pretty hot form. Daisho and Meisei, Daisho 5-1 lead. I would think that Daisho can take that one fairly easily. Unless his ribs are really stuffed, I think he'll get there. It's been only 5 weeks or so since he busted it, but I think they should be healed enough that he can roll over Meisei with his big style. Asanayama versus Wakamoto Haru. This will be quite the fight. I think the former Ozeki Asanayama and Wakamoto Haru in good form. Wakamoto Haru being a belt gripper. This could be the fight of the day. I can't pick him out of these two. I think I'll give it to Asanayama. I think his Ozeki former rank and his experience will get him there. Unfortunately, I do prefer Wakamoto Haru, but in terms of style, but I think Asanayama is probably going to take this one. The pillow against Shodai, Kotonowaka versus Shodai. This will be a pretty good fight as well. They're 3 all against each other. I'll be interested to see how Kotonowaka does this one. Nishikigi and Tamawashi. Look, I'm going to have to give this one to Nishikigi. I think he has the experience against some of the higher guys, and certainly he faced most of the the Sanyaku ranked people back in July, whereas Tamawashi, he's up to Megashira 3. He didn't really face too much Sanyaku opposition in July, so I think Nishikigi's in pretty good form, and he's probably a little bit fired up about the way he finished that tournament. Takanosho versus Ura, 2-1 record to Takanosho. Ura got a good Yorakiri last time they met in March. Bit hard to pick this one. We'll give it to Ura. I think he's probably going to take a little bit of a bit out of Takanosho there. Gonayama and Shononumi. Look, I'm pretty much going to have to say Gonayama is going to beat Shononumi here. Shononumi was a lower Magashira rank at that time. He's come up the ranks a little bit after a good tournament, but again, he didn't face a lot of Sanyaku opposition at that time. The other fights on the day, Onosho versus Ryuden. Onosho has a 2-0 lead. Takayasu versus Oho. Takayasu has a 2-0 lead against Oho. I expect him to take this one. Kota Eko and the big round belly man Hiradumi. I'll take Koto Eko here. He's big, he's strong, he's mobile, he's fierce. Big belly Hiradumi, I think he needs to learn something we might call in Australia a little bit of mongrel. A little bit of fire and passion I think Hiradumi needs to show here, and Koto Eko certainly shows that. The next fight I'll be watching would be Midori Fuji versus Kimbozan. Look, Midori Fuji, after his 2 awful tournaments in May and July, if he can't win this, what can he win? He's got a 1-0 record here, which doesn't say much, but I'm hoping that Midori Fuji has his balance and composure back. His confidence has taken a real beating in these last 2 tournaments. He's going to have to change that and take out Kinbozan. I think he should be able to. He's got a bit of experience, and Kinbozan's fairly new, fairly young. I'll give this to Midori Fuji. So the other fights of the day, Takara Fuji versus Hokuseiho, Nishiki Fuji versus Sadanumi, Miyagiru and Aoyama. I think Aoyama could take that one quite easily. Atami Fuji and Kotoshoho, Surugishu and Chiyoshima. And up from Juryo Kageaki, he's back up to Magashira after dropping down. And Daishoho, I think Kageaki should probably do that. He has a pretty good tournament in July. Day 2 is interesting. Nishikigi versus Takakeisho. That'll be a good bout. The little fighting hamster Takakeisho with his short arms versus Nishikigi in a pretty good position. Hokuto Fuji versus Hoshoryu. That'll be the match of the day. That's a rematch of the Basho from July, the fight-off. Again, I think Hoshoryu will still win that one. He really just overpowered Hokuto Fuji in that fight-off for the Basho. Kirishima versus Meisei. I would think Kirishima should win that easily. Abi versus Wakamoto Haru. I'll give that one to Wakamoto Haru. Kotonowaka and Asanayama. Now, this will be a good fight. Again, I think Kotonowaka's in pretty good form. It's going to be hard to pick a winner there. Asanayama's probably favourite, but I'm going to pick Kotonowaka there. Daisho versus Shodai. Depends which Shodai turns up, really, whether he's in form or not. Tamawashi and Tobizaru. Got to give the flying monkey that one, Tobizaru. Gonayama versus Ura. Gonayama should, if he's in good form, take that one. And so, there's plenty of good fights to be had on day 1 and day 2. It should be an interesting tournament. As for the winner of the tournament, I think Hoshoryu, for me, is the likely favourite with a unknown. I mean, it depends on how injured Kirishima was. He looks, like he's pretty good. So I think it'll be a battle between Kirishima. Hoshoryu would have to be close to favourite. And I think the dark horse in this tournament is probably Asanayama. I think he's a bit disappointed how he went. He did go Kyujo halfway through the tournament for 3 days, came back and pushed out his 8-4-3 record, got his Kachikoshi, but I think a fit Asanayama will be the dark horse of this tournament. In the background, certainly Takakeisho, he'll be wanting to show what he can do. Daisho, he'll be a little bit motivated, but perhaps a bit injured still. Wakamoto Haru, again, motivated, but I don't think his style is quite there just yet. Kota Nawaka, maybe a bit young, and certainly he's one to look at. So that's a September tournament coming on Sunday. What are you watching on? Are you watching on NHK? Are you watching on YouTube on a live stream? Or are you going to watch the replays on the Grand Sumo app? Whichever way you watch it, I hope you enjoy the tournament. I certainly will. And I'll come back a few days in and give you a bit of an update of where I think the tournament's going. I hope you enjoy the podcast, and I'll see you next time. Hakioi listeners, let's learn sumo.